Sechaba Maape. Do you call yourself doctor?
Depends on the context.
Do you identify as a doctor? Sorry.
Yes, I do.
You identify as a doctor?
Yes, professionally I have to.
I'd like to ask your opinion on titling. I apologize for deviating from what we're here to discuss. I've spoken to medical doctors.
Yeah.
And number one is a misconception with all of us. The MBCHB, to qualify as a medical doctor, is an undergrad qualification from what they say. It's not a PhD. It's not a doctorate.
No.
You have a doctorate.
Yes.
A PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happens that you guys have the same titles. How do you feel about that? Do you think we should change? Because it's misleading. Dr. Ndlovu.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't mind it. I think in our different domains, people understand what it means for me, for instance, in architecture, to have a doctorate. And within our profession, it's not a big deal. You know, I don't think anyone would misunderstand the value of me having a doctorate within the field of architecture, just because there are people who've got a doctor in front of their name because they did medicine.
You sound like you're being diplomatic. Is that how you really feel? Don't you?
No, that's how I honestly feel, because like I'm
saying,
saying,
you have a doctorate. They have an undergrad qualification.
Yeah. People understand. So like I'm saying, in architecture, it takes 7 years to be an architect. Okay. It takes almost as long as it takes to be a doctor.
A medical doctor, just
to be a medical doctor. To be a professional architect takes 7 years. One of its top 10 most difficult courses to do.
Architecture?
Yeah.
Top 10?
Yeah.
Hectic.
Compared to medicine and all these other things.
Okay.
And so in architecture, if you say you've got a PhD, people really understand. So they're not going to confuse you for the, qualification that a medical doctor has and say, oh, well, do you feel some sort of way?
Outside of the 7 years to qualify as an architect, how many more years till you get a PhD?
Depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Whether it's full-time, part-time. I took 5 years.
For your PhD. So it's 7 plus 5.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyways, I think I was just raising it for myself because I think we need to change the titling. Because for the man on the street, they're like, oh, Dr. Maape. And you're like, no.
I've had haters say to me, you useless doctor. You can't even help someone who's dying.
Yeah. Which is why I was saying, how do you feel? Because the next person...
Well, I mean, obviously people can't understand the value of a doctorate because it's so lofty.
Yeah.
As in a PhD doctorate. It's so lofty. You can't really recognize that the things that I do and other people like myself impact your life day to day, but they impact it at such a broad, systematic level. But a doctor, a medical doctor, is doing something that you can see directly. And so you say, this one, we doctor useless.
Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre.
Dr. Maling.
Dr. Khumalo, vele.
What's architecture, technically and to you personally?
Okay, so how do you want to engage this? Do you want to take it back or do you want to talk about it? We can talk about it like this. There is, a very elite thing called architecture that people do across the world. It's generally for the rich. It started in the Renaissance. It's very big in Europe and in America, but especially in Europe. And it's kind of like a club, if you want to put it like that. That's the thing that we call architecture that people study at schools. Nowadays, people make money out of it, like developers. They hire someone called an architect to go and build Stain City, the one that you spoke about recently.
I love Stain City.
And it's seen as a profession in that instance. But in its sort of recent history, it's really this elite thing where this great guy like Michelangelo or whoever comes and builds this wonderful thing and is usually, hired by a rich patron to do something that we can marvel at. And it's like a craft. It's like ballet. Think about ballet, and those sort of classical practices.
Playing the violin.
Okay. The bougie stuff. That's what architecture is, which you then understand why it's one of the final frontiers for change and decolonization and transformation, because it's one of the babies. It's one of the held close in terms of, I would say, supremacy, because, that's one of the ones that no one but certain people can do.
The final frontier of decolonization.
One of the.
So the Springboks, shout out to the Springboks, Siya Kolisi and the boys for winning, are still a triggering symbol for many people, specifically the EFF, Nabo Julius. For many people who are pro-black, pan-Africanist, they see the Springbok as this symbol of white Afrikaner nationalism, which they want to protect. And even if they bring in black players or colored players, it must be the ones who have assimilated largely, braaiing, having a nice clippies and cola, can speak Afrikaans, etc. You're arguing that architecture, let's say arguably on the African continent, is one of those spaces where any white supremacist notions are like, you can play around with everything else, but this is one of the spaces, leave it alone. This is what building design and stuff should look like.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say people are doing that consciously, and people are doing that in some sort of systematic way, but you can see the way in which people behave when it comes to architecture. Every time, I mean, you can ask my wife who's here, my beautiful wife.
Shout out to your wife.
Every single time I say to people, particularly people of a certain demographic, that I'm an architect, the reaction is always the same. Oh, you're an architect. And it's like a big deal, you know, and they really make it a big deal because somehow architecture is just one of those things that is so difficult and is so elite.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's almost impossible to imagine that this young guy, let alone is an architect, but has a doctorate in architecture.
Yeah. It's not weird for you when you walk in spaces. Do you not feel, how am I trying to explain this? So people look at you a certain way. Let's say, for example, you're going around saying you're a rocket scientist. Does it make you feel some type of way? Or do you feel like, this is just what I chose? Or do you like, actually, I'm fully conscious of how elite this is, the space, and how much of a unicorn I am?
Yeah, look, Penuel, hey man, architecture is one of those things, like at WITS, it's a bloodbath. It's like a bloodbath, like, and not just WITS, all architecture schools. If you don't come from a certain kind of privilege, you were saying to me now in the kitchen that it's privilege. I'm coming from privilege, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, Penuel.
It was an example.
Yeah,
it was
sure.
an example.
This guy, and it's true actually, because when I was in high school, I did art, and my art teacher was a professor, and had it not been for me having a professor from a university,
that's unique,
come and be an art teacher at my school, I don't think I would have managed to do the things that I did at WITS, because for many of the, a lot of the time I was there, I was one of the top students. You know, I got 2 distinctions in my master's. And that's...
Take it easy on us, bro.
No, I'm just...
No, please.
I'm just saying
Please own it. That's too dope.
Yeah, and that's because of that background, which actually says to you that for us to take ownership of that space, there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Because, which is one of the points that I wanted to talk to you about. Architecture has a lot to do with a certain kind of way of thinking. You know, it's about precision and accuracy, like a doctor.
Yeah.
You know, but then it's about creativity, the kind of creativity you expect from a Picasso or from like a genius piano player. They say that architecture is the highest art of all the arts.
Of course, it's architects.
No, it's not architects who say that. It's not architects who say that.
Who says architecture is the highest form of art?
Just if you go to these sort of circles in Europe where you find like, you know, these people who've got like long money, generational...
Monaco, south of France, boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you engage them and you talk to them about the way in which people perceive architecture in those spaces.
Yeah.
The most bougie, the most privileged. Architecture is really revered as the highest form of art. You know, if you're an architecture student, you can do graphics, you can paint, you can make furniture, you can make clothes, you can make anything. If you've studied architecture.
Is that a real thing? Is that how you guys are trained?
100%. Think about Virgil Abloh.
Okay.
Virgil Abloh studied architecture.
I didn't know this.
He was an architect, and then
as a fashion designer.
Chief. Then he went on to be the creative director of Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
That's what architecture is.
Rest in peace to Virgil, man.
Yeah.
Small deviation. The idea of getting what we'd call hyper-educated, very intelligent, hyper-skilled people to educate children at the youngest levels, and your personal opinion on that. Having a professor teach art, having a senior advocate go and teach children whatever at high school level, whether it's full-time or on a part-time basis, is this something that you think could benefit society? Because you clearly believe that having a prof teaching you art was a game changer for you.
I had a prof teaching me art, and another one, don't know if she was a prof teaching me drama.
Yeah.
We had drama every Friday at school, right? What does drama do? Drama teaches you confidence like you cannot believe.
100%.
Right? We were always, every single Friday, standing in front of a group of people, learning how to be confident. And this thing I took, subsequently to the rest of the things that I was doing in my life, meaning that it is true that what you put in, especially at a young age, benefits you. I mean, it's sad for me to say this, but when I look at the demographic of students that I've had, because I teach at WITS, right? And we get like an intake of we get an application of about 5,000 students.
For architecture?
Yeah, right? Between 5,000 to 2,000. Out of those, about 70% of them are black. But when we whittled it down to the final number, which is about 65 that go
65?
in.
65?
Yeah.
From 2 to 5,000?
Yeah, that go in.
Sure.
The numbers have changed over the years. The demographics have changed over the years. But, generally, proportionately, you still find there are more white students. If you compare in terms of the percentage of demographics of black and white in South Africa, there are proportionately still more white students coming in than black students. Yeah. And it's got a lot to do with background.
Yeah. You do support the idea of getting highly educated, highly qualified people teaching kids?
I don't know if there's any other way if you're going to be competitive at the level that one needs to be, at least for something like architecture. I mean, even if you did really well in matric, right? You still have to compete with people who've got 90s for all their subjects. Our entrance exam is 50% maths, but you have to compete with people who are getting 90%.
100%.
And these people speak well. The first project that we give them, they'll get an 80% for that project. You're still trying to figure out how to, submit assignments on our web platform. You don't even know how to do that.
Don't know how to use a computer.
Yeah, well, you can use a computer to a certain extent, but you can't navigate the complexity of using the online platform.
I'm just thinking for kids from the villages and the like.
Exactly, and we have a lot of that happening. And then now on top of that, you have to study something like architecture, which is all about, this deep thing that you have to connect with on the inside, which is deep levels of creativity. And you have to come up with this new thing that no one has ever done. And then you have to code it somehow in a rationalistic way to make it actually functional.
Political question, and I apologize. WITS is still not transformed, in your opinion?
WITS is very transformed numerically, but I don't know if it's a WITS thing or it's just a general South Africa thing. I don't know how much they have managed to transform the systems and the curriculums so that they can accommodate some of these challenges.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying. My first year course, I teach a very transformed architecture, which has a lot to do with indigenous knowledge and things that you would ordinarily not see in a curriculum.
Yeah.
But that's just me. And I had to go through my privileged father, like you say, being taught by that professor, go into WITS, study, do all of the stuff that I did, do a PhD, and then become a member of staff, and then start doing the transformation job in the curriculum for these next generation of kids.
Is it the only way? Currently?
I don't know. It's like me and maybe 5 other people, black South Africans with a PhD in architecture. So there's not that many people to think about it, and not all of them are academics. And
maybe they may not have a potential decolonization,
agenda.
Pro-African agenda. There was a lecturer that I don't know if he was fired or if he left. I don't know if you know that story. There was an issue with the content that he was teaching. I know there's Dr. Lesley Lokko, who I've been trying to meet with at UCT. There was a lecturer recently. I just forgot his name. I'll remember it and I'll put it in the comments somewhere. And there seems to be a pushback in the institutions against, there seems to be, in the media at least, against academics who have a pro-African decolonization agenda, because like this is not what we're here for. And it might speak to what you're saying about the perception of this is one of the final frontiers of changing, where you're like, we've never done this before. This is what the right architecture is. What you're coming with here is primitive or whatever, and we're not into it. You don't get pushback.
I don't get pushback by colleagues in that sense. But the main reason why I want to be on public platforms like this is because if I don't have the right kind of clients, you know, like we talked about patrons, I need a whole group of clients to be conscientized to the fact that they need to demand a different type of architecture. Because when students go out there, you know, you go and work for a firm who is doing designs and cities and malls for a developer who's got his own agenda. And those developers are obviously benefiting from historic circumstances.
Correct.
So if I'm an architect and I want to do my Wakanda stuff, who's going to pay for it?
Yeah. Please, can you rehash on the patrons, the importance of patrons and the history of patrons in terms of the way we see the world today, specifically, I guess, from a design perspective. We can add architecture, fashion, etc. But what is the importance of patrons to you?
Yeah, like we discussed last time, you know, let me put it like this. I want to design the most incredible building. It needs to be this building that's inspired by Africa, right? I want to make this thing, when African people look at it, they need to have goosebumps.
Yeah.
They need to feel like, oh my God, this thing has elevated my idea of my right to exist and my perception of myself to such a high level that I now no longer doubt that I'm as equal to other human beings on earth, you know, in comparison to how I was made to feel in the past. I must see this thing and it must immediately connect with something deep inside myself. Yeah. My identity, my past, my values, the things that I like, my idiosyncrasies, everything. I need to connect with this thing, right? Now I have to design a building like that. That doesn't have an immediate return on investment in terms of capital. You know, it doesn't have the sort of things that are going to get the developers salivating. Yeah. But really, really rich patrons in Europe have seen the value of that and have done stuff like that. Yeah. And it has elevated, you could almost say that it has made Europeans perceive themselves the way they do, because, you know, you create these monuments of great achievement and it's like, that's us. Yeah. We did that, right? Now, how are we going to achieve that other than someone putting in the money and being like, look, this thing is something I'm going to pour money into because we want to create the best of the most incredible things that we've ever seen. I mean, just think about it, Penuel. Which building, space, monument have you ever seen that you can say that this thing is connecting to the legacy of us as Africans in such a way, contemporary, in such a way that we can look at it and we can say, hey guys, we finally arrived. We are on the platform. We are on the playing field of humanity.
We have no such building, specifically as Black Africans here. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking of when you meet an Egyptian, whoever they may be, one of the first things you think about is the pyramids. And by virtue of being an Egyptian, it's almost like they belong to you and your people. And because there are so many conspiracies around aliens building them and the greatest feats of architecture before technology, you almost feel like Egyptians are part of an elite group of people that existed with pharaohs and the like, to a point where all other Africans, when they try to reclaim their dignity globally and they fight and they argue against white racists, they say things like, we used to build pyramids.
Sure.
Because we want that so much. But here we haven't had that. And when you and I had a chat before, I used the Zulu kingdom as an example of getting a patron, someone who's like, this is going to be a passion project, not doing it for money or return. If ever there's a return, great, but that's not why we're doing it. I want to revive or at least create the dignity for Zulu people so that anyone in the world, when you say I'm Zulu, not only is it the story of Ushaka and the movie, which also wasn't created by us, but shout out to, I think it's Bomb, Utonomza Mombata and Ushaka Ilembe. I want anyone in the world to be like, when you say you're Zulu, to what you're saying, like the pyramids, oh, you guys have that. So I have an idea of the caliber. You know, when you speak German engineering, when you meet a German, you're like, are you an engineer? You're like, oh, no. But you probably have the mind, because, I mean, all of you guys are. You're Chinese, so that means you're... because...
And think about that. Look at what Asia is doing and the stuff that they're building.
Yeah.
And, you know, people sort of criticize the Burj Khalifa in Dubai.
Yeah.
And they say that this thing is monstrous. It's a monstrosity because it takes up so much energy. It's a glass tower in the middle of a desert. But, you know, yes, obviously people who are environmentalists will critique it on that basis. But what has that done for the prowess and the global presence for Dubai?
And the Emiratis.
Yeah.
When you see them walking in their white things, boy, they look, all of them.
I mean,
they look like an elite group.
If anything, people who are critiquing that should blame everyone else who was building, you know, towers to demonstrate their power in the past, because these guys had to build something that is even the tallest of them all
100%.
To demonstrate that, look, we are here and we've arrived.
Sure. The sheikh that, I don't remember his name, and it's not important for this context. The sheikh that is in charge of Dubai, because Dubai is part of the United Arab Emirates. So for people to understand, it's almost a collection of kingdoms. And each part, Abu Dhabi, which I think is the capital, Dubai and others, I think it's 7 of them. They all have like their own king, of which the king or the sheikh of Abu Dhabi then becomes the president of the country. And then the vice becomes the sheikh of Dubai. And he was being interviewed, I think, by an American interviewer. And he was saying, we want to build the best schools in Dubai. We want to have the best businesses come set up their headquarters. And in this interview, I was like, but why are you in such a rush? Why? And he's like, why not?
Sure.
You guys have been doing this for long. Why can't we do that? Why can't we boast that we have the best? And it's not going to take us hundreds of years because we have the technology. And when you watch that little clip, you get goosebumps for someone like myself, imagining one of your leaders speaking like that.
Sure. Speaking
about, but in South Africa, you're like, but this is for my people.
You know, Penuel, so like now, Thabo Mbeki, he commissioned the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library recently, right? And so I was on the board that was deciding how we need to go about doing this project. And I said to them, you need to bring in what they call in the architecture circles a star-architect, meaning a star architect. It's like a taboo word in architecture because it's basically this person who's idealized as like a superstar.
A rock star. Kanye West, Elon Musk.
Yeah, exactly, right? A star-architect. Some people have called me a star-academic because they see me doing, but this is a star-architect, right? And we asked them to bring in a guy called David Ajay. He's actually knighted by the British Queen. He's Sir David Ajay, Ghanaian British guy.
Okay.
Black guy.
Mixed race?
No, he's as black as
black. By Ghanaian
black.
British, you mean citizenship?
Citizenship, right?
Okay, but he's black African.
Yeah.
David Ajay.
David Ajay. You need to know that, right? So David Ajay then did this building and he's just designed it so far. It's not yet been built. It's meant to be somewhere next to the Thabo Mbeki, his house.
Okay.
So
shout out to you and Thabo Mbeki, by the way.
By the way, you know they call him the patron. If you go to Thabo Mbeki Foundation, everyone says the patron, the patron, the patron. Because that's what this guy's mind is. That's where he's at. Ever since he talked about the Renaissance, people think it's just about Africanization. No. It's about having a real civilization that we can call our own, you know, which is funded by us, where we can see our aspirations coming true.
Yeah.
And architecture is one of the things that people do to achieve that. It's by saying we're going to demonstrate that we are also here, you know.
Before you carry on with David, I'm a big choir boy. I sang choirs my whole life. I used to dream of being part of the Drakensberg Boys Choir. And I performed with them when I was part of the KZN Youth Choir. Last year, they performed in Joburg. Brilliant performance. I think it was at there's this theater in Bram. I forgot what it's called. There's a theater in Bram at the top there. And they were the director, the conductor of the Drakensberg Boys Choir would like to thank our esteemed guests, what, and we'd like to welcome ex-President Thabo Mbeki. So to what you're saying about he's a patron, I can only assume that was one space I saw him, but he's probably in a lot of spaces because he fundamentally understands what you're speaking about.
Remember, he's the one who commissioned Freedom Park, which people call...
That's in Pretoria?
Yeah.
Okay, I've been there.
And people call it a white elephant, and that's because there's managerial issues there. Yeah. Not so much because of the architecture itself. And by the way, when they designed that building, they tried to be subtle, which I completely disagree with. I wouldn't have been subtle because when you drive to Pretoria, you can barely see it, right?
Yeah, it's on your right.
Yeah.
You're driving in.
But the whole idea was that it was supposed to be part of the landscape, which is commendable and nice. But if you really think about what we're trying to achieve, so, there's this guy who wrote a book basically dissing all the buildings that have been done in post-apartheid South Africa that are supposed to be iconic buildings meant to, connect to our identity as African people, as Black people. Similar to Freedom Park, there's another legislature in Kimberley. It was meant to look like something that was designed by Khoisan people, but like high-tech, super futuristic. And the person who wrote that book, the book is titled Black Mask, White Skin, which is basically from Frantz Fanon, the title of Frantz Fanon's book. Basically what he's saying is that these buildings on the outside look like they're for Black people, but actually they're very superficial. On the inside, they're just still white buildings, right? What some people don't understand and why I'm talking about, white mask, black skin.
White mask, black skin.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what people don't understand that we're trying to do still as Black South Africans is we're trying to get rid of the stigmas. At least that's what I'm trying to do. The stigmas that we can't achieve anything. We can't do something of greatness. And so the whole thing of Starchitects, them dissing people because these people are perceived as Starchitects, they're arrogant, they want to be seen. They're missing the whole point. The whole point is if you have a Black guy who is achieving great things in architecture, and that architecture, as superficial as you might think it is somehow expressing something that is, supposed to be African, which is a whole discussion that we're having. That's basically my research. How can you make buildings and spaces feel African and iconic, right? When you do that, you're not just doing it, it's not just about the functionality. It's about the fact that people can look at it and they can have pride and they can have dignity. And we can finally put rest to this thing that Africans are not fully human. Yeah. We can't achieve anything. We're not conscientious. That's why I wanted to talk to you about conscientiousness. Sure. For you to put together a high-tech building, my man, the way you need to be able to draw straight lines and to line things up and to be systematic and to be on the ball, it's like a crazy achievement, right? And we can do that. Just because at Home Affairs, people are, in some Home Affairs, they're like a little bit what's that word?
A little bit. Lackadaisical. You talk about the system is offline.
Yeah.
And 3-hour lunches.
See, those are the stereotypes.
When you say government department to people, it's a trigger word. Baba ni trauma.
No, I understand. I understand. And we all experience that. Although, I've got people who I know who work in government who work very hard and try and make things 100%. As systematic as possible.
A lot of brilliant government employees. They just don't get the spotlight.
Exactly. So the point that I'm making is that, there's this sort of stereotype that somehow, they're going to take over. They're going to mess up the whole thing, And that's the thing that we need to get rid of. So hence I'm saying that you can critique architects in Europe and be like, these guys are arrogant. A project is more than just about you showing off how great you are, etc. They've had their chance to show off how great they are. Yeah. We haven't.
Yeah. Shout out to David Ajay. Thank you for telling us the story. I hope it comes to fruition and it becomes something real. As you're speaking, I can't help but think of Kanye West interviews, even speaking about Virgil, because it seems like one of the things Kanye's been trying to say. And I wonder how much of an influence. I know how big traveling is. We spoke about Trevor Noah and his platform. he's spoken about if you ever are to invest in anything, invest in travel. David Ajay, Ghanaian British. So he's been in Britain and seen the European way. Ex-President Thabo Mbeki, I think, studied in London at some point. Then I think of Kanye West, who for a part of his childhood was based in Asia. Not sure if it was Japan or somewhere. And the importance of what that does to be like, I'm in these spaces. Now you're speaking about the prof that taught you art. I've been in these spaces. I've met these people that are meant to be so great. The Egyptians and the Chinese and the Koreans and the Germans. And
exactly.
I'm like, never mind a lot of things, but I'm doper than all of them.
Sure.
I had a conversation with my son. I'm sorry to deviate. I had a conversation with my son, Nkunz Malanga. He's my firstborn. He's 13. He's been based in China for 4 years. His mom was teaching there. He's there with his younger sister, Africa. They moved last year to Brazil. So they're going to be there maybe for 2 years or 4 years. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. And one of the conversations we had, me and him, was, how have you felt being in spaces in China? And he explained a lot of the nuances. It was cool when we got there. Some of the spaces we're in, they're not used to black people, so they touch our hair. They'd want to take selfies. After a while, it got annoying. It's like, leave my hair alone.
Sure.
No one goes around touching your hair. The other thing, I was like, do you realize that you're smart there? And he's like, yeah, I was top of my class. I'm like, more than the Chinese kids. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, most of them are not smart. He's like, sure. I'm like, most people don't know that.
Sure.
And you're going to travel the world because you're in Brazil now and you're probably going to be top of your class. And people are going to say things like, it's because he studied in China.
Sure.
No, and I'm like, it's not that.
Exactly.
I need you to know, because I didn't study in China. I didn't study in Brazil.
Yeah.
I want you to know that your father's fucking dope. And I want you to know that you're fucking dope.
Exactly.
And everywhere you go, if people are going to be like, oh, it's because he went to Hilton. No, it's because he was at Bishop's. It's like, no, it's because I'm just fucking dope. Don't put that on me.
Yeah.
The exposure of overseas travel and whatever you experience and seeing the people that are like you or less than you, and you're like, I know kids back at home that would fucking run circles around you. And then what Kanye has done, because I know he had a platform for black creatives. I think there's a video on YouTube. The idea of, we keep having Black History Month in February. We keep speaking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X. We're not speaking about a black future.
Sure.
We're not speaking about a black future. And at some point, stop telling me about history and slavery, because it's like you want me to be in prison there. And I'm telling you, I've got dope ideas for the future. Why don't you want to ask me about that?
Sure.
So I can't help but think about Kanye in this instance. We can speak now consciousness, spirituality, and the history, I guess, of the design you speak about.
Okay, consciousness and spirituality. So I think the biggest lesson that I learned from my research, so I was trying to understand how people survived in the past, right? And again, this thing led me to the same kind of conclusions we're discussing now about what we've achieved as African people. So in my research, I was trying to understand how people survived various disasters in the past. And one of the key things that I came to realizing is it was through people knowing that they can condition their own brains. You know about brain conditioning, Ivan Pavlov, the Russians basically brainwashing people. There was self-imposed brainwashing.
Please tell us that story. Pavlov and the Russians.
So Pavlov basically was this this psychologist in Russia who came up with a system of brainwashing a dog by either giving it a treat or giving it a punishment. And he realized that, by taking it through these different exercises, he can condition its brain. But then one day, one of these dogs, as he was traveling with them, there was a car accident and it fell inside the river. When he took the dog out of the river and he took it back to the lab, he realized all the training was gone, right? Meaning that the trauma basically undid all of that training. Now,
this is the story of Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, through my research, I realized that African people, through a process that we call ritual, right, had already discovered this many, many, many years ago. So basically, think about what happens in a ritual. You start from a certain kind of reality, a certain type of existence. You are still nkwenkwe, right? That's what they call it.
Small boy.
Small boy.
Yeah.
Then you go through a process. What does that process usually involve? Involves some kind of a trauma,
yeah,
right? You have to go through some kind of a trauma so that you can transition to become Indoda.
Amen.
Right.
So this is in the Xhosa culture for people that don't know, where they go through initiation, which normally involves circumcision, that rite of passage to becoming a man.
Exactly.
And to go to Entabeni.
So now what I discovered was that actually that methodology or that process was something that people were doing in order to survive all kinds of things in existence. So say, for instance, you're living in a place where there's a drought and you need to shift, you need to change. People would induce pain within themselves to get rid of their past conditioning in order to adapt into new circumstances, right? And this is the foundation of African spirituality. So how it works is that think about the whole world as something that's constantly shifting and changing, the climate, the environment, all of that. In order for you to survive, you have to be able to maneuver and manipulate and change according to those rhythms and those movements. People who managed to do that and survive were people who managed to recognize that you can unbrainwash yourself. Think about what that means today. If you can unbrainwash yourself, if you can brainwash yourself towards the right thing,
sure.
If you can break your conditioning, you've got a very limited conditioning. This is what I was talking to you about when I was telling you about my dad and his comrades and how they could suddenly wake up from this brainwashing that they were going through all those years, which was apartheid, believing that in actual fact they are inferior. So this thing that I got from my research, this idea of being able to and recondition yourself is the most powerful tool that I've found so far in my research.
It's decolonization, essentially. I'm a big fan of homeschooling, home education. I experimented with my kids for a year or two with that. They'd still go to school, but I'd take a day or two off. One of the methods suggested in homeschooling, especially if they've been in normal school, is a process called unschooling, which is to leave the kids. Don't wake them up and be like, now we've got, leave them. Just let them be for a while, whatever that while is, and encourage them to gravitate towards whatever interest they have. And then from there, once they have a feel of I like this, then you choose which schooling model or homeschooling model you want to move towards, which suits the child best. Some kids maybe are most productive at night. Maybe some kids are most productive with their hands. Maybe the other one, if you leave them alone, they just want to read everything. So you're like, now that I've seen you guys and you've unschooled, now we're going to start this new process, this new ritual.
So this thing, Penuel, is connected a lot to me in relation to what we call conservative and liberal, right? I have a lot of people in my life who perceive themselves as conservative, right? Far right thinkers, people who are like, things need to stay the same, things shouldn't change. Tradition, and then on the other side, there are those people who call themselves liberal. And right now in South Africa, people are playing with people's minds with these simple categories, these dichotomies, which actually comes from the US. I mean, the US, they are on the verge of killing each other because of so-called liberal and so-called conservative values.
Wokeness.
Right? On the one side, it's wokeness. On the other side, it's whatever. Now, there's this political philosopher I watched recently. His name is Bremner. I can't remember his first name now. And he talked about how the most powerful thing that you can have is strategy. And strategy comes when your worldview is so broad and so wide, you force yourself to see something through someone else's perspective. Like, for example, if you've got a friend who's part of the Ku Klux Klan, you say, hey, my man, I want to really understand what's going on in the Ku Klux Klan. Why do you guys think the way you do? What's going on in that side, And then you go to another friend who's part of the LGBTQI community and you say, hey, my friend, I want to really understand what's going on with you. What's happening in the LGBTQI community? Some people will hear me say that and they'll just be like, hey, you're crazy. But in actual fact, what that means is that you understand the nuances of both those sides so well that you've got this meta view. You can perceive this thing from a bird's eye view and your capacity to adapt. Now, this is what I'm saying African people from my research had, this deep level of adaptation.
Charles Darwin.
Yeah, on an even deeper level, right?
So I just wanted to mention that it's not the strongest or the smartest species that survives, but the one most adaptable to change.
Exactly, the most adaptable to change. So, you know, right now in South Africa, we've got this thing of politics that's chowing us, right? On the one side, there are these people who say we should go for these policies, you know, whatever policies they are, whether those policies have to do with the Patriotic Alliance and their views. On the other side, there's this one. But what do we actually need in South Africa? We need, as South Africans, people who are going to be voting and whatever, we need to be incredibly strategic, because some things in this policy might work. It doesn't mean the whole thing wholesale is going to work. Some things in this other side might work. So it basically means, as South Africans, we have to wake up to be able to choose which things are working and which things are not working from all sides. Because I'm telling you this thing, I mean, in America, you might find that I just hate the idea of abortion. I haven't even thought about it. I just hate the idea of abortion. Why? Because I'm supposed to be a conservative. You know, in the other side, they'll say stuff like, yeah, you know, people should choose how many children they want. As in, these are the progressive liberal people. You should choose how many children you want. It's up to you. But then when there's overpopulation, they don't know what to do. They're just like, yeah, you know, there's overpopulation. The planet is burning. But then they don't know what to do because they're so committed to the one side. So basically, this thing of being fluid, which I'm saying is something that our ancestors did very well, is an example of our achievement as African people, you know, which is something that people don't talk about. And right now, if you go to these, you know, business workshops and whatever, these are the kind of things that they present to you as new, progressive, most cutting edge ideas in terms of how to succeed as a business person.
The last point you mentioned, and what I'm thinking of when you say these things get pitched, is the irony and hypocrisy, laughability of green, eco-friendly, working with nature, herbal, organic, things that were African in the past that are being pitched to us new today from another source. I wanted to mention two things that came up. The first, I wanted to mention the name of the Sheikh of Dubai, because I've got internet here, Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. That's the clip. And as you're speaking about the abortion story, two quick ones. And I'm sorry, I do this thing of deviating. The first story is Freakonomics. It's a book by Stephen something and Stephen something. I'll get the name. I read in varsity. And they were talking about the implications of abortion in certain spaces and how certain events are linked and we may not see them. One of them being, in certain areas, they realized that once they legalized abortion, 20, 30 years later in that area, crime went down. So we don't know if there's a link, but it becomes then you academics will come and be like, look, we think because unwanted babies were not allowed to be born, we didn't have kids that became orphans, thrown in dustbins, didn't get love from their mom and dad, were abused, who would eventually end up being criminals. So one of the pros for, I guess, people that are pro-abortion is, if the child is unwanted, what type of life do you think this child is going to live? And how will they impact society later? I went on a hike, Klippriviersberg Nature Reserve, with a friend of mine, Sanga Besman. And he told me about this documentary on Amazon Prime, One Child Policy. I haven't seen it. One Child Nation. I haven't seen it. And he raised this thing, because we're speaking this abortion and fertility. And he was like, some of the unintended consequences, and this is why leadership is so difficult. You have a vision, you have an idea, we need to implement this, there's overpopulation, but there are unintended consequences. One of them, and I'm only raising one, I haven't watched the documentary. When China implemented the one-child policy, number one, it was only certain spaces, like let's say in Joburg, Durban, where it could be overpopulated, but in the villages, you could have 2-3 kids.
Sure.
So if you're like, oh, my sister, it's like, oh, you're from the village. If you've got siblings,
Sure.
you know, you come from poverty.
Sure.
The second thing is a lot of Chinese men wanted sons. And if your only option is to have one child, a lot of female babies were killed. If you could find the gender before, aborted.
Sure.
I want a son. And the impact of what that would have moving forward. I just wanted to raise those as thoughts.
I want to bring it home to architecture and South Africans and things that are practical now, right? So take the whole thing of how girls are supposed to dress. We've got this idea of freedom. You know, you're supposed to dress however you want.
Yeah.
I was in Europe once and in a city called Cologne. And I went onto a tram.
Cologne is France, Italy.
Germany.
Yeah.
Okay. And I went into a tram and there were these two young girls. They looked like they're about 10 years old, eating ice cream, holding shopping bags, getting into the tram alone. And in that moment, I just thought to myself, yo, guys, in South Africa, we always talk about public spaces as architects. And there is no way I can imagine two young girls eating ice cream, holding bags, maybe like Louis Vuitton, whatever, getting into a taxi in South Africa. Cannot imagine that, right? But imagine our policies, because we are so obsessed with freedom in South Africa, because obviously we worked hard for our freedom.
Yeah.
Our policies are very liberal policies. But what happens now when you've got a young girl in a township or any other space who is supposed to express themselves in those ideas of liberation and freedom? Are they going to have the same sort of freedom? You know, they can just dress however they want. So some people will be like, yeah, those views are very conservative. But are they conservative when, you know, in situations like that, you actually don't have the type of social networks and the social protection that in Europe? Europe is like a gigantic gated community. You know,
gigantic stain city.
A gigantic stain city. That's why you can be free to do whatever. People will be like,
Kids can take walks at evening by themselves.
Exactly. I mean, there was this joke that guys can drink and just pass out in the street and you wake up and your phone is still there, whatever.
Jeez, that sounds like Rhodes University back in my day.
Because it's this giant gated community, right? And so what I'm talking about when I'm saying adaptability is that in South Africa, we've got like these sort of, either you are conservative or you are liberal.
Yeah.
And so if you're conservative, you're going to have these very conservative ideas. And, you know, some of it is connected to neoliberal policies, whatever. If you're liberal, you're supposed to be socialist. I don't buy into that.
You buy into adaptability.
I buy into whatever we need to do in South Africa needs to respond to exactly what we need. You know, so if you are going to, you know, if you do need solar panels, then get solar panels. If you need, don't say, I don't want solar panels because I don't believe. It's like what happened with COVID. You know, people are like, I don't believe in COVID.
Yeah.
What is that? What is I don't believe in COVID? You know what I'm saying? I don't believe in climate change.
Shame. That was Bob Marley. May he rest in peace. He didn't believe in modern Western medicine. And when he got infected, he was like, nah.
Yeah.
You know, Rastafari will take care of me.
Sure.
And then unfortunately passed on.
So the point that I'm making really is that what I learned through my PhD is that we as Africans, because of this thing of adaptability, were able to survive all kinds of things. Yeah. And right now, South Africans are going to be voting because somebody's telling them that you need to either be on this side, which is the side of, you know, anti-foreigners and anti-this and whatever, or on this side, which is the side of pro-neoliberal policies, whatever. What if we need to build gigantic skyscrapers? And this is the critique that I get from my fellow colleagues. They don't want me to talk about beautiful buildings, aesthetics. They don't want me to talk about us building our own Burj Khalifa because I'm not being progressive enough. And I'm like, nah, what do we need right now? It's not about me being progressive or me being conservative. It's about what do we need right now?
Do you believe in parallel visions? So one of the conversations I think we've had before is not enough of us are speaking about 50, 100, 500, 1,000 year plans. Where you've got your own little, by the time I'm 80, I want to have 50 million and retire.
Sure.
Parallel to that, I want to work on something that is bigger than me, that will only take 1,000 years to realize.
Sure.
I think one of our guests said, David Ansara, he said something along the lines of, he went to India and the statue of Buddha, I stand to be corrected, took 800 years to build. So the guys building it, obviously, at the inception, etc., would never see it. We've got basic problems, issues in this country. People need to eat. People need decent homes because our pyramids for South African identity is a shack and an RTP when you're speaking architecture. You're South African. Oh, so you live in a shack.
Sure.
Or do you live in an RTP? You're like, no, I live in a mansion. Can't be.
It's like in Brazil, when you think Brazil, favelas.
So you must be from the favelas. This idea of focusing on those issues as part of the vision, but being like, guys, along with those, and as much as I don't like him, the idea of smart cities, that's what Ramaphosa speak about, and have them parallel. That, look, we will sort out your basic issues, but we're going to need you for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour a day or a week. We're going to need you to go and work on the construction site at Burj Khalifa. No one's paying you. You're not getting money. You're not getting paid, but it's because we're trying to build something for the future and get buy-in. Do you think that becomes part of the... Because I can imagine when you're saying you pitch some of these things to your colleagues and you get pushed back. If you were discussing this on a platform with in this political climate we have now going into votes, and you're like, I want to build, and they're like, yeah, but people need homes. As an architect, when I tell us how we can build more RTPs for South Africans so they can have homes.
Do you know who are the first people that critiqued me in the past when I was talking about the type of thing you're talking about? Let's think about the social issues. Let's think about, dealing with housing. The people who were critiquing me were black people.
Yeah.
They were just like, hey, Mfwethu, us, we want nice things. And it took a long time for me to get to the point where I realized that nobody wants upgraded shacks. Nobody wants upgraded informal settlements. People want, and if I'm saying that I just want to upgrade shacks, that means that I need to justify to those people, why they deserve upgraded shacks. And the people who are advocating for upgraded shacks, ask them where they stay. Do they live in an upgraded shack? And that's why I'm saying that, I can't fall into camps, the so-called liberal camps and the so-called conservative camps. Because if we want people to, live a better life, for me, it's all going to be aspirational. And it has a lot to do with money. And it has a lot to do with injecting businesses into South Africa. I'm not an economist. But when you look at Singapore, surely Singapore should be something that we look to as an example. Because, I don't want to talk too much about my colleagues, but I remember one person, I did this exhibition where I was showing these like high-tech African buildings, right? And she said to me, but where's the grit, Where's the grit? Dirt. So you want dirt. Otherwise, it's not African. Hey,
I'm glad you're raising this because I wanted to raise it earlier. The concept of African art. I did art in high school as well. Unfortunately, my teacher wasn't a professor. Shout out to Mrs. Ans Bester. I went to varsity and I happened to date a lady who was studying visual art. Yeah. She came from some privilege. Her father was in exile. He studied art overseas and he came back and he became a visual artist. He's a professional artist today. He exhibits at the biggest galleries locally and abroad. And through her, vicariously, I got to live this craving because I wanted to be an artist at some point. I learned a lot through her and through her dad. Her dad, I'm not going to, because people are going to maybe know what art he does, but his art looks African because it depicts certain things. Then I met one of my other favorite artists through him, Uvelaphi Mzimba. Johannes Bokela's great now. Connie Tama, Gerard Sikoto, if I'm pronouncing his surname correctly, and those people. And when you see their artworks, it's almost like Ijaz, Yabo Huma Segela, Nabo Miriam Makeba. This is African. Ladysmith Black Mambazo.
Sure.
And then when you come with maybe Johannes Bokela is a better example because he infuses what's African with, you'd look at it, you're like, wasn't this in Michelangelo? You're like, no, it's a South African black boy. About Nasty C and these guys who then you're like, but that's not African, Baba. This is not going to sell in the streets of Europe. The idea of African art, grit.
Why do you put a prefix? Why is there a prefix African? Because that basically implies there's art, then there's African art. There's architecture, then there's African. And I get what you're asking me. I understand because that's what I work within, right? Many people have critiqued me and been like, these are Africanists and Pan-Africanists. When you call it African art, you're basically saying that there's, a universal art, which is actually a Eurocentric thing.
Correct.
And then there's African art, which is, you know...
Should we dispel the idea? Because it is a form of identity. Or should we try and fuse? Or should we separate the two? So there's going to be a kid. We call these free thinkers. And I remember a meme of Jaden Smith and Willow Smith. Will and Jada's kids. Jaden was dressed in a skirt. His sister was dressed in what. The sister is polyamorous. The son at some point was not eating. And, you know, and the caption on that picture was, a lot of people don't understand Will and Jada's kids, but what if this is what free kids look and sound and think like? So you're going to get the kids who are going to be like Kanye, why can't I design this? Like, but it looks Italian. You're like, who the hell cares? This is what I like.
Sure.
And then you want to get the kid who's like, no, I make African art because this is what sells in Europe. I get there and I'm like, I grew up in an informal settlement, South Africa.
Guys like that.
If you're going to an African art exhibition, there must be drums, there must be African cuisine.
And they speak like this.
Yes.
In Africa, my people. And I know
and
people.
It sells, boy.
My man, I know architects and people who sell their whole thing like that. And you can see who their audience are. And that to me is adaptability. Because I don't see that guy as, you know, being disingenuous. He's just doing what he needs to do to get to wherever he needs to get to. You know, he's being an entrepreneur because you're selling something, right? And if you are selling something...
Sorry.
So just on the
Oh, okay.
The mic. No problem. Please carry on, Sechaba.
If he's selling something that there's an audience for, you can do that. But the whole thing of African started a long time ago, dude. There were people in Europe. Africans, intellectuals, who started a movement called the Negritude movement, right? And these guys were trying to figure out, after slavery, after oppression, what are we going to be? Because before we were basically slaves, non-human. Remember, there were even scientific projects to prove how animalistic blacks were
100%.
Compared to Europeans. Then they were like, but now if we get liberation, are we going to be promoted to being white or European? Because human was defined as white. Europeans went through a lot of trouble proving that being a human is them.
Which is still the case today. We had a chat with Musi Maimane, and that was one of his issues at the DA before he left.
Sure.
That you've got white liberals whose concept of being liberal is within a white framework.
Exactly.
And I think the example you used was, if you're taking leave from the DA, you're like, oh, no, at home, we need to do something. They don't recognize that as a leave.
Sure.
The leave must be sick leave, or my child's getting baptized, something Eurocentric.
Exactly. And this is something that academics debate about a lot. It's a well-known issue, right? It's this white supremacy issue.
Yeah.
Now, those same guys then said that, look, we can't say that we are animals anymore. We're no longer animals. We don't perceive ourselves like that. But we can't say that we're human if human is white.
The only concept of human
is white. The only concept of humanity is...
You can't even speak English.
Yeah.
Why are you dressed like... Why is your hair looking like that?
Sechaba,
you're a lecturer. You represent WITS.
Exactly.
You have to be an example.
Exactly, right? But now they came up with a different option, and they called it strategic essentialism, which is we need to essentialize what it is to be African. In other words, there's a difference between European and African in terms of the model of humanity. Ours is like this, and this one is like this. And, lo and behold, the Europeans critiqued them, and they said this is a racist, anti-racist movement.
Come on.
Because you're basically saying that there's a racial difference, or there's a difference because of race between Europeans and white people. And they were like, yeah, we hear that, but in order for us to really assume a position of having legitimate contribution to the notion of humanity, we need to somehow separate ourselves, because if we just fall into being human as being European, it basically means that the struggle was the struggle to be European and to be, validated.
Sure, when I grew up to be umlungu.
Yeah. So they came up with this thing called negritude. And so it was critiqued for being a racist, anti-racist movement. And that's where all of it started. That's where African jazz, they were poets. So they started with African poetry. Then there was African music. Then there was African art. Then there was African architecture and African whatever. So I'm saying that it's necessary for us right now to essentialize ourselves and to say that there's such a thing called African design. Why? Because
so you don't mind the prefix?
I don't mind it, but we need to be conscious of its implications. We need to understand its history, right? And that there are people out there that are, I mean, dude, on LinkedIn, the amount of times I've been attacked because I'm always talking about how things need to look.
Yeah.
You need to look at something and it must look like this is an African thing. Or at least it must give you some sort of indication that this thing is got an African authorship.
Sure. It was created by a black person. I would have never guessed.
Exactly. Because otherwise, you know, we're still dealing with this thing of, I mean, there was a time, I think it was during the BRICS thing. There was this guy who was the president of some bank or whatever, and they asked him to talk at BRICS. And the guy came up to the stage, he's a black guy. And the first, you know, when he opened his mouth, you could hear that, I'm here to talk about what we've been doing in our organization. And I'm just like, yes. Like,
why are you judging, Charlie?
I'm not being judgmental.
So judgy.
It's not being judgmental. The point that I'm making is
He's
that...
doing the opposite of the...
Yeah.
You know, in my village,
yeah, exactly.
He's doing the opposite.
So, you know, it's a battle. It's a struggle. And people who don't appreciate the fact that I'm talking about we need to have things that look and feel, and at least there's some way in which you can identify its authorship belonging to a black person. And the reason why we need these patrons, by the way, I don't mind black, white, gray, Indian patrons. Hey, if you've got the money and you support us, Baba,
but there'll be an African signature somewhere.
But the point is it needs to feel like, you know, there's something that we've achieved as African people. And not to say we haven't achieved anything, but it really needs to motivate us. You know, I'm really excited about the future, you know, because I really, really imagine every single day our version of Singapore, which is Wakanda. You know, we can talk about Wakanda. Our version of Singapore.
Dubai.
Our version of Dubai, whatever. You know, the only critique I have with Dubai is the fact that they didn't count on the fact that, you know, they're going to be dealing with this thing of prices of oil and all of that. It's Yabakawata somehow. And they actually have a plan to have a post-oil, you know, Dubai.
Economy and what.
A post-oil economy. But the point is, you know, critique Dubai as much as you want. What is our Dubai? What is our Singapore? Can you imagine? Can you imagine guys walking in the street, kids walking in the street, you know, whether they are Lani or they're not Lani, and they're playing on their skateboards and they're walking around and they can walk into a museum and they can go to a theater and they can do whatever in South Africa? I mean, come on, is that really too much to ask for?
I'm going to respond to that. I want to give a plug, even though I'm not being paid. Leave the World Behind. It's produced by Michelle and Barack Obama. It's on Netflix. Julia Roberts, Mahershala Ali, fucking sensational actor. Ethan Hawke, Kevin Bacon, and other people are in the movie. But I just remember this movie because I watched it recently. Julia Roberts and her husband visit, it's like an Airbnb, this stunning home. And at some point, a black man and his daughter come knocking on the door. And they're apologizing and they're like, I'm so sorry, this is very odd, etc. But we were in town, I needed something from my house. This is actually my house. And I just was wondering if I could get something here. And the looks on their faces, Julia Roberts, and they're like, are you sure this is your house? Because I mean, you know, that nuance of which Get Out is probably one of the best. Jordan Peele, one of the best movies on racial commentary out there. Your question was about spaces.
Is it so hard to ask for us having our own version of Singapore?
I hate plugging Stain City because it's like I know Do Stain and his wife personally, which I should. Do Stain must give me money.
Hey, Do, bruh. Sure.
And him and his wife are huge patrons, by the way, along with others. We mentioned Sir Donald Gordon. You mentioned the Oppenheimers as well. I was at Stain City recently meeting with a mate, Talipani Banks. We're discussing his business, Paza Eats, which is going to rival Uber Eats. Brilliant. And while I was there, I was like, we have got these mini pilot spaces of design and architecture, of which Stain City is one.
Sure.
Waterfall City, which has been built on the Mia family. I think they're an Indian Muslim family in Johannesburg on their land, including the N1, N3 that goes to Pretoria. All of that, government had to ask for permission to build that highway.
Sure.
Because all of that land on both sides belongs to the Mias, and they have, I think, 100-year leases or 99-year leases. Then we bring up Orania as another potential. We're thinking Singapore, we're thinking Dubai, we're thinking maybe Monaco, Miami, whatever place you've been to, Phuket. This place is so beautiful. I wish South Africa was like this. You've got these spaces, Umhlanga, Palito, Camps Bay. I mentioned Orania. I think there's Kleinfontein, if I'm not mistaken, which is like an Orania, but I think racist. Philadelphia Arc. And then you've got the townships, which were designed through apartheid spatial planning. And you've got squatter camps, which are black people spatial planning when they force themselves onto land.
Sure.
And to your question, my whole thinking is, number one, can we not experiment with all the models? We've got more than enough land. We live on 2% of the land on this country is where human beings congregate. Number two, can we not then pitch these different models and have them play around? So go to Dubai, pick the places, Burj Khalifa,
Sure.
the beach, the places that stand out for you. Create a model and be like, for a pilot, I'm going to need 1,000 hectares. And I'm going to build Dubai. And I'm going to go to Tokyo.
Is that not what Sbu is trying to do? Sbu out there in the farms.
DJ Sbu with Homegrown Farm.
Yeah.
And Ekasi Noble Properties.
I mean, that's what I'm imagining. I wish I could go and talk to him and see what they're trying to achieve there.
The short answer is no. The longer answer is it is black entrepreneurs who are just have acquired land and they're selling portions of land and they're allowing people to build their homes. It's like no ordinary property development ideas. It's not meant to have an African signature. Unfortunately, it's just black owned spaces.
Which I think is step number one.
Of course, 100%. Yeah. I think this is what I mentioned Sol Kerzner last time as well, and maybe Dostane as well with Villa Stain. You travel around the world and you see pieces of things that you like. And you come to South Africa as like a blank canvas.
Yeah.
And you pilot these things. And you're like, we're going to build mini Germany and mini Spain. And be like, guys, these are the options we have. Go visit these spaces. These are the ones where the kids get to run around till midnight. This space has a tram. This space has a Gautrain or subway.
Sure.
This space, the people ride bicycles.
Yeah.
And they have a rickshaw. This space, we have, drones. And then we now start, especially for you guys in the education space, take all these kids that you have, and you class tours.
Sure.
We're gonna go to all these spaces because we want you guys to be like, before you travel to Rome and Italy, and we've got a mini Rome and a mini Italy and a little Netherlands. Go and see these spaces and then let your juices flow on the future of when someone says South Africa, what it looks like. And it mustn't just be a shack. Maybe it must be a giant shack. Maybe it must be a shack with free Wi-Fi and I don't know.
I want to make 2 points there, right? So I want to know why DJ Sbu didn't do that. Why didn't he say that, because he's got this platform, clearly he has enough money to create this place. Why didn't he say, over and above just like selling whatever here, we want to sell a certain vision in terms of how the space should feel and look. Are you telling me that his constituency would not be excited about that? That's question number one. And educating the patrons, right? Did DJ Sbu see that there's some kind of value proposition? There's value that could be added if that was the way in which he was marketing this thing and selling it, right? So that's number one. And then number two, I've been trying to do that at WITS for now the past 4 years. We design an entire town with my students.
That's
every
dope.
Single year.
That's dope.
And
every year you guys release a town design?
Yeah, it's like, and they build this gigantic model. Although COVID kind of messed us up, but, we create this big model and the students imagine what a Wakanda could be. And I even show them Wakanda.
Yeah.
From the beginning, we talk about it, but that's the point. That's the whole thing here is that I'm an architect. I don't have money. we need the guys, the patrons who have the money. And to me, hence I'm talking about DJ Sbu. If he had this big piece of land and he's bringing people on to build, which, I believe black people should really consider DJ Sbu's project. Because, where are you going to build? You're going to build at some other estate.
Sure.
Why didn't he think about it like that?
So I'm gonna start off by just putting up a mirror and blaming you.
Sure.
You, number one. I hope Sbu will get to see this clip and maybe he'll respond to it or it will inspire choices. From the little bit that I know, he's not working alone, he's working with partners. So I guess there's a vision that is not just his alone. And whatever their vision is, which I think a part of it is ROI, which actually becomes a huge hurdle for creatives.
Sure.
We need to make money, there needs to be a return.
But think about the people were upset at you for talking about Stain City. So basically people are saying on social media that you were saying that Stain City is like the bee's knees, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, yeah, this place is a monstrosity because it's right next to an informal settlement.
Oh, Deep Sluit.
And, how can we have this wealth, this incredible wealth next to this place, which is, and then it's literally shut out from that, right?
Sure.
And it's like, guys, at the end of the day, for me, when you were saying what you were saying, it wasn't, it's not about just looking at it in terms of those issues of inequality. We all know South Africa has inequality.
100%.
And a lot of the people who are complaining about inequality are beneficiaries of inequality in South Africa, right? The ones who were dissing you for talking about that stuff.
Yeah.
But you cannot understand or at least my desires, and I think you share the same kind of desires for aspiration, and especially overt forms of aspiration. It all looks like you're very money focused, you're capitalistic, neoliberal, privileged. You just want to, and you don't care about the poor.
And you said this last time that you see it in townships where you might criticize us, but even people in townships, the little bit of money they get, they improve on their home because they are aspirational.
They create mini Stain cities for themselves.
Because that's what they want.
Exactly. So, come on. Any person that you ask right now, would you rather stay in a shack or in a nice house?
Yeah.
Someone who to me says I'd rather stay in a shack, I'm going to be
They're capping, they're lying.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole thing about black aspiration is something that black people understand. And some people in this country don't get that. And so now imagine you're surrounded by a whole industry of architecture, which is what I'm surrounded by in terms of the intellectual industry of architecture, telling us that, it's bad for climate, as in climate change. It's bad because of inequality. It's bad for whatever other reasons. Do not be aspirational.
Yeah. So again, I'm blaming you. I'm going back to your questions and I'm blaming you. So DJ Sbu has partners.
Why is he blaming me, this guy?
I'm
here and I'm preaching.
DJ Sbu has partners, and I don't know what their vision is, but I think a part of it is business.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think both of us know business has limitations.
Sure.
Now, to your first question, but collaboration.
My man, business has limitations, but they are building Tuscan houses. You cannot tell me that the Tuscan-ness of it is such a big thing if you change that. Just talk about the color of the building.
They can't know what they don't know. This is why I'm blaming you. So collaboration. You look at Kanye, who's worked with Virgil. You look at Kanye, who's worked with Mike Dean, Rick Rubin, Jay-Z, whoever he's worked with. You look at Elon Musk, who's worked with Peter Thiel, Reid Hoffman, all these amazing people. Yeah. Never mind, these are people that we know, but you can imagine the number of engineers, designers, producers, etc.
Yeah.
It's collaboration.
Yeah.
So what's meant to happen when you spoke about first step, when you see a DJ Sbu talk about property, you're like, I know a lot about this space. Let me go and approach the guys. What's up, guys?
Hey, Penuel, now I'm not a celebrity like you, Chief.
Celebrity?
How am I going to find DJ Sbu?
How are you going to find DJ Sbu?
I'm here and I'm talking to you. What do you think I'm here for? And why do you think I even brought it up? Why do you think I even brought it up?
Yeah,
That's why I brought
get
it up.
defensive. It's fine. I'll keep blaming you. So, DJ Smooth is one of the most accessible chains. So
You would know that.
the people that are no, I'll tell you. Even with Ekasi Noble, they always host seminars, and he posted on his socials.
Sure.
So at any given time, you know that on Saturday, Smooth will be exactly here
Yeah.
on that day giving a speech.
Okay, I take that.
Yeah. So you're meant to. Maybe this is not just for you. It's blaming anyone with some type of knowledge, skill, idea around anything.
Sure.
You see the Penuel show, and you're like, hey, why don't these guys do this? Why don't they? You are meant to, because you know better than me and us.
Yeah.
You can't assume that we know. We don't know.
Okay,
I don't
but
know what. Let me keep
Okay,
blaming
sure.
you. Comrade, please sit down. You are meant to take the initiative.
Yeah.
And this is a call out to you and other people that are qualified and have the vision and have seen the world. Come and approach and suggest. Guys, have you considered having an African signature to this thing? I mean, someone like Usbu would love to hear something like that and be like, my man, I'd never thought of that.
Yeah.
Please come through. Let's chat about maybe the buildings we're doing. Can they have a special touch? It could be something as silly as every house must have a rondo at the back for pal.
Sure.
So we are intentional about every home will have an African touch, where some home have a space for prayer.
Sure.
Where certain Muslim homes, their bathrooms look a certain way. Where our homes, everyone is going to have indawo yokuphahla, so that you know this is African design. This is designed for the ancestors.
It doesn't even have to go as far as a Randaville. Just take Boek Up in Cape Town. Boek Up in Cape Town, literally all they did is paint the buildings multicolors.
So you come with that.
And the amount of tourism
Sure.
that goes there, it makes business sense.
Ndebele,
Sure.
Dr. Esther Mahlang.
Exactly.
That's for you, because for the Elon Musk and no, you must take it.
Sure, I take it. Hey, Grotman. Okay.
For the initiator, the Steve Jobs, the Steve Wozniak, they are always going to be limited, and that's why they are meant to build the creative teams, of which sometimes we're limited by money. Sometimes you don't even know you're meant to build a dope team.
Sure.
But for someone like yourself who's got an eye, you are then meant to approach and then come back and be like, but I've tried pitching these things to the guys. They didn't listen, they didn't understand. They said, we don't have the money, we don't have the patrons. But be like, at least I did my bit. At the lowest form, you create an online video. Hey, this is a video to DJ Smooth and the guys at Ekasi Noble and Homegrown Farm. I'm an architect. I've got a PhD. I've got a doctorate in architecture. I lecture at WITS. I've been looking at the work you're doing. I'm so proud of you. This inspires me as a black man that you guys have taken this step. I'm willing to put my hand up to assist. Maybe for free. We'll see if we can get money to bring in some of these things that I've seen. These are some of the ideas. I work with students. I'd love to bring them there. It's part of their practicals. We normally design these
you've
towns.
heard him.
You know what I mean? That's for you guys to do. The next person, I've studied fashion design. Tsepo Jeans doesn't even speak to. Go there.
Sure.
I've created, I don't think Ipatu actually speaks to the African child. It doesn't adapt. How can we create a Yeezy shoe for Africa?
I DM'd him and he ignored me.
Which is okay, right? But I'm saying you can create, we've got the tools today. A TikTok video, it might go viral.
Sure.
I sat with Miles Berger, who I admire very much. And I was driving through Alex and I saw a container, Twalisa. And they have brought back an old school concept of you earn fortnightly because you're a security guard, you're a domestic worker, you're a gardener, you don't have much money. You make money as and when. You're a taxi marshal, 25 rand every time a taxi driver comes through. You only have 20, 30 rand a day for taxi, for what. You can't buy a big sack of maize, of rice, of whatever.
Yeah.
So they said we're going to bring back the old school thing of come with the container and we'll scoop up we'll scoop up a bit of rice for 5 rand for you to have a meal today and tomorrow. We'll give you a little bit of cooking oil, a little bit of sugar. We'll give you 5 tea bags.
Sure.
To try and innovate. Now with this container, because Miles comes from, I think he said he worked at Microsoft. He might be a IT engineer. I apologize to Miles if I'm getting this wrong. But he's on version 9 of that because he understands what you're talking about. Version 9 of this thing. It is a Wi-Fi hotspot to the people around there. It has solar panels on the top so that it powers the place when there's no power. And hopefully it can power some of the houses around, etc., etc. versus just being Ndlovu.
Sure.
But that's him. For the next person, you see Gogo. She's like, Gogo, I think there's something we can do for you here. We can put a container around. We can do the Ndebele design.
Sure.
We can make this futuristic. We're going to bring kids every week. A kid is going to win a free what if they come and do their best dance challenge at TikTok in front of this container, and you collaborate.
Okay.
Collaboration.
Can I defend myself now?
First you must take it.
I've taken it. So look.
Sorry, we don't have a cloth. Or if I can get in my bag, there might be a serviette there. Sorry.
First and foremost, right?
That's my suggestion to your questions.
First and foremost, you have to remember that I had to decolonize my own brain.
Yeah.
Right? So the whole...
We never did a deep dive on the trauma. I really, really love that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we'll get time for it, but...
Sure.
Thank you, Tebza.
I mean...
You had to decolonize your brain.
I had to get through this process myself,
Tebza.
right?
Sorry. Thank you. You had to get through this process yourself.
Because think about it. I'm in a space where everyone is kind of conditioning me to think about things in a particular way. Academia in general, especially at these sort of liberal universities, they have an agenda, man. There's an agenda, there's a kind of, and if you want to get by, if you want to survive, you kind of have to talk the talk and do whatever. And often when you're taught by people, you just sort of take what they say and you assume this is the gospel truth. Yeah. Hence, I talked about breaking away from conditioning. I talked about Pavlov. You just mentioned trauma now, diving into the trauma and rewiring your brain so that you can learn.
Rites of passage, initiation.
Exactly. Yeah. Learn something new. And ultimately, that's where I got to this thing where I'm talking about not falling into these camps, the so-called liberal camp or the conservative camp. Because, for example, when one of my students wanted to design, a master student, she wanted to design a space where she comes from Danzane. And she noticed, yeah,
sure.
And she noticed that in Danzane, lots of people do initiation rituals in their houses, right? And she was like, well, I want to dignify this thing. So I'm going to design a whole modern futuristic structure that's going to actually host these rituals, right?
Sure.
The critique that she got from colleagues was that, because one of the things she proposed was to put...
Mkiti is what it's called, sorry.
She wanted to put the house of the chief or the headman, the office of the headman in that space, right? She got critiqued by someone saying you want to continue patriarchy. You see. And
shout out to wokeness.
Yeah, and this is in the exam.
Why can't I have initiation? Just because I'm a woman. But you also don't have a... No.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And she actually designed gendered spaces. So if you talk about gendered spaces in architecture today, it's like a no-go zone, right? But she knows that in traditional culture, especially in ritual context, there's gendered spaces.
Correct.
And of course, people from within that culture have the right to change it. If they want to not have gendered spaces, they can do that. But in the context of her space, from her home, they had gendered spaces as part of the... So now imagine this student, had I not been her supervisor, had I not gone through the process I went through, had I not known about the story of a racist, anti-racist movement, strategic essentialism, all of those things, she wouldn't have had someone to back her up in that space. I had no one to back me up. In my final master's year presentation, I literally said to everyone who was there, and I got a bit of a nod from a lady called Mpoma Tsipa, because she saw what I was about to say and she just did this. And I said, no one here could supervise my thesis. Because there was no one who actually understood African values and African spaces in architecture. So imagine I had to teach myself all of that stuff.
Denzel Washington.
And then, which is why I had to do the PhD. I had to learn all of that stuff myself because the pedagogy, the knowledge was just non-existent. So it took all of that. Then it took years to build the confidence in the stuff that I was saying. Not that I'm not a confident guy, but the confidence to know that actually what I'm saying is legit.
Yeah.
I've read enough. I've looked at it. I've got all the backing.
Yeah.
Once I've done that, then I can sit and be like, okay, now I'm going to go on Newsroom Africa. I can go on whatever. And I can actually start to conscientize the rest of my people to say, that inclination you had, that instinct to build your house bigger, to make it look nicer, to put your stop nonsense and decorate it the way, that inclination is not wrong.
It saddens me that people like you have to go through all of that. It saddens me. Denzel Washington in an interview, it's a clip. I watch TikTok now, I apologize. Sometimes it makes me sound smart because I take a little bite, then I say it, and it's like I read a book. He speaks about the importance of having certain race cultural directors of certain movies. He's like, forgetting the examples he made, but something along the lines of Steven Spielberg making some movie, I don't know if it was about the Holocaust, and Martin Scorsese making a mafia movie, etc. He's like, it's not about race, it's about culture.
Exactly, I saw
because that. Spielberg could have made a movie about the mafias in New York, wherever. Martin Scorsese could have done a movie about the Holocaust. But there's a cultural relevance. And when you're making a movie about black people and perming your hair and being chased, and how you feel when you see a German Shepherd, an Alsatian just walking past, how the most educated, most privileged black guy, when he sees a cop driving past, how he feels.
Yeah.
He's like, there's a cultural relevance that can only be experienced by someone who's been in that space.
Sure.
And that's why certain movies require a certain type of director and a nuance. And he's like, it's not race, it's culture.
Sure.
I'd like you to raise her name again and maybe mention the event, Lesley Lokko.
Yeah.
Who you brought to my attention. Now you speak about people that back you. And the importance of, I think the term is a sponsor. I stand to be corrected. They speak about specifically people in corporate. You get a mentor, someone who could be your boss, could be another boss somewhere who's been there for a while, who tell you how to move around. This is the person you must be nice to. Make sure that you attend the cheese and wines because that's where the things happen. Make sure that you're delivering this note, dress like whatever. I think it's called the sponsor, the people that fight for you in rooms that you're not in.
Sure.
That when you're in there, it's like, we need Sechaba too. It's like, no, but he doesn't believe in the philosophy. And you're like, listen here. The world is moving. The people in America are somewhere else. The people in Europe are somewhere else. The people in Asia. Who is going to be our Elon Musk, Kanye West, Jack Ma, whoever that's going to represent us? And I'm telling you, this is the kid.
Sure.
You don't understand him now. I understand him.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to put my own career on the line to say, build your little team of whatever kids you think are the top. I want this kid there. I want Siya Kolisi there. Yes, he doesn't speak great English. He doesn't speak Afrikaans in interviews. But as the world moves, because I can tell you now, for the Springbok brand and for South Africa, there are certain doors that the average brilliant white Afrikaner rugby player would have never been able to get in.
Sure.
That's only Siya Kolisi and his story and his race and his culture and his experience for the Springboks to be discussed by the NBA and the NFL. And so it's only him. And if he had not been backed by someone who was like, trust me, maybe it's a Rassi Erasmus, but way before him, it could have been an Alistair Kutia at Western Province. It could have been whoever was coaching him at Grey High School. It could have been whoever his scout is when they found him as Weed. To be like, back this O.
Sure.
And when you look at the thread of all the sponsors, see, I wasn't there. He was on the field playing, laughing.
Sure.
Yeah, I got picked even though I can't speak English and my family's poor. I can't afford boots. You're like, trust. And I think that's very important.
Sure.
Who Lesley Lokko is, what she means to you, the Biennale. And before you answer, I need to give a shout out to this lady, Vuyelwa Mdlalose. She was very keen on our sit down initially. She's come into my life. I believe she's based in Europe, in Portugal. I think she's an architect or a designer. She's got a very world view. South African black girl. She calls herself a simple minimalist, but who believes we can do anything.
Sure.
She was excited about me sitting with you, and she's one of the people that admires Lesley. Who's Lesley Lokko and what does she mean to you?
So Lesley is like one of those people who showed the world of architecture that a black person, a woman, can achieve things that some people who are not of that profile have never achieved themselves. To me, what she represents is the fact that you can do it. And that's basically the message that she showed the whole world, right? So she's a Ghanaian Scottish architect and novelist. She's actually won more awards for writing novels than for architecture.
She's mixed race.
Yeah, she's mixed race.
It's not just citizenship.
She's mixed race.
Unlike David
Ajay. Yeah,
Okay.
and they're homies, right? So Lesley Lokko came from, I think, Europe or the US, came here, and she started an architecture school, a graduate school of architecture at UJ. It's not 100% connected to the undergraduate program. It's like its own thing, right?
University of Johannesburg.
Yeah, part of UJ. And she brought in a system of architecture that came from London, which is called the unit system, which is a completely different thing than what we're doing here. And she was very smart because she then marketed this thing like crazy. I mean, she got like the best people in marketing who, when you look at this thing, it's world standard. And then she got sponsorships from, different architectural practices and whatever. And she did these exhibitions of architecture. Hey, my man, like when she came, it was like something new.
Yeah.
We were all bamboozled. I mean, there were like factions that came out of this thing. They don't know what they're doing. It will never last. It's just like superficial. People were like, it was hectic, my man. Like architecture was disrupted big time. And there are people probably now who are listening to this being like, feeling the same way they felt back then about her. So she came and she interrupted the whole thing, okay? And she left a legacy because this thing's still existing right now.
Is it a school? Is it a course?
It's a school.
At UJ?
At UJ.
Does it have a name?
Graduate School of Architecture,
Graduate
GSA.
School of Architecture at UJ.
Yeah.
Shout out to
Powerful
Lesley.
stuff, right? And it's the newest that's come on the scene. But the way it like, completely unsettled people.
Yeah.
And it's brand new.
Shout out to the people that backed her, because I can imagine at UJ, someone also had to give her the thumbs up. Like,
exactly.
Say, do it.
For real. And, the best of the best lecturers descended on this thing because they wanted to be part of it, which was another strategy that people don't like, but she's a strategist. She's a example of the type of thing I was talking about earlier that I learned from my PhD, from the earliest San and Khoi people about adaptability. She went to the capitalists and asked for money. But on the other hand, she's doing stuff with the artists. On the other hand, she's doing stuff with the LGBTQI community. She was like strategic. I mean, I'm sure if Lesley was in a war, she would like be, hey, my man. You know what I'm saying? And that's powerful. Yeah. And, I wrote an article about her. And I was just talking about, the article was titled something about being audacious, because that's what she showed us. She came in, she was audacious, she created this whole thing, and it won awards. People recognized it all over the world. She invited one architect who's like this big architect to one of the seminars at UJ. My man, architecture students from everywhere. People were like selling things. People were camping there, descended to UJ. Because it was like, I don't know, like think of a rock star or hip hop star, someone like that we'd have never expected to come to South Africa, arrived, and all the students were there and they were inspired.
Gordon Ramsay of architecture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although again, some of my colleagues would be like, he's a star architect, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Haters.
Hey, my man.
Stop with the hate crimes, man.
Yeah. And so she then went on to be selected to be the curator of the Venice Biennale. Now, Venice Biennale,
Venice is Italy.
Venice is in Italy.
Okay, Cologne is in Germany.
Yeah.
Sure.
The most prestigious architecture event in the world. I mean, I don't know even how to demonstrate the significance of this thing. That is I'm sure, the rulers of the planet, the 8 rulers of the planet probably sit there and they, come and eat caviar while watching this thing.
Yeah.
That is how up high that thing is, right? It's like powerful. I told you the story about the fact that it was sponsored by Rolex, and my colleagues who were invited to the Rolex party got bounced at the door because they changed their mind. It's like prestigious.
Yeah.
And Lesley became the curator. For the first time, Black person and African, the theme. She made the theme about Africa.
It's too dope.
For the first time. You know, so for me, that was Burj Khalifa. That was Burj Khalifa in an event.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you say, what the content was. She then completely demolished the idea that Africans can't achieve things of that caliber. I mean, there's another guy called Francis Kere, not because it's somehow connected to Lesley, won the Pritzker Prize of Architecture, another highly prestigious. He's from Gando, small village in Burkina Faso, you know.
Shout out to Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
It's Thomas Sankara landed.
That's another Burj Khalifa. That's another achievement where this person has completely demolished the idea that this thing of elitism, this thing of like, you know, you have to be Michelangelo. Think about that. Michelangelo, you know,
His
the
name is
Renaissance.
Francis Kere.
Francis Kere.
Diabedo Francis Kere.
Yeah.
Burkinabe, German architect.
Sure. Achieved the highest achievements. So I wrote this article and I said in this article that Lesley Lokko showed us that we need to be audacious. You know, I don't like this victim mentality that sometimes we have as African people. We're sitting there, oh, you know, nothing can happen. She had exactly the same resources that the rest of us. Why didn't we do it before she arrived? You know, why are people complaining that, you can't complain if you didn't do it. And that for me was the issue.
Sure.
So Lesley Lokko basically represents the same kind of ideals that I have, that we need to, through our actions, through doing whatever we're doing. Now, I want to take it back to what you were saying about Sbu, right? And your your attack on me.
So it was a criticism,
constructive. Sure. Now, the whole thing that I want to do now is to raise an architectural consciousness in South Africa. I want South Africans to be like, because it's one of those things that, you know, the countries that have the most privilege and the most culture, you know, where culture is funded, people are having discussions about architecture. I mean, if you go to London and someone wants to build a new building in a neighborhood, the community are going to like, you know, there'll be a huge community discussion and they'll be like, no, we don't want this building because it's kind of not in the style of Rococo, you know, or whatever. I don't know if that even makes sense in architecture, but the community themselves. So, you know, someone like myself, because of the history of my dad, having conscientized me about just basically being a liberated black mind, going to WITS, having the privilege to be able to go to a school where I was taught by that art teacher, going to WITS, doing everything that I did, led to the point where I want to now help South Africans have an architectural consciousness. Yeah. So, you know, in my defense, it took long, my man.
Yeah.
I mean, there are even black people in my field who they themselves don't really understand what I'm talking about when I say that we need to have our own Burj Khalifa. It doesn't have to be the tallest building. Yeah. It could be a Lesley Lokko, and she's achieved that. It could be anything that makes us, you know, stand on the world stage.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't have to be validated by, you know, the fact that it's in Europe or whatever. It can be validated by the fact that it's here at home and we achieve something of greatness.
I once sat down with Umzwanele Manyi. He used to be spokesperson in the ANC and then he left and he joined the ATM, which is led by Vuyo Zungula now, and now he's just recently joined the EFF. But in that sit down, we spoke about decolonization. And when he explained what decolonization meant to him, I was like, but it sounds like you speak about Afrikaans people.
Sure.
Because you are speaking about being passionate about your language, creating our own literature, building our own schools, having like our own dress that when you see a person wearing it, they're like, hey, you're part of not wanting to be a part of British colonization. Because I think that was where the Afrikaans thing came out, because the Afrikaners wanted to be moved away. When you say white people, they like, don't punch us, because white people in South Africa could be from Britain. We are Afrikaners.
Sure.
On top of the fact that Afrikaners is African. It literally means African.
Sure.
I'm raising this because in that conversation, one of the things I said to him is, I've met so many white people in South Africa and on the African continent, and as much as we may call them colonizers, beneficiaries of colonization, apartheid, there are a lot of them without knowing that would benefit so much from the conscientization of Black Africans to a point where they benefit, to a point where they get to travel the world and they speak African languages and they become an oddity themselves. They're like, you're a white person that can dance.
Yeah.
You're a white person that you're like, it's because I come from Gabon.
Sure.
It's because I'm from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm an African. And you're like, we've never seen anything like this. He's a bad example, but the number of Africans that have put us on the world stage, like a Lesley Lokko in various forms, someone like Elon Musk, because we don't know how much of his upbringing and experiences being here have informed his audaciousness and his bravery and his desire to want to do something different, to a point where, imagine if Elon Musk was a Black South African, how much hype that would be today.
Yeah.
We see similar things with Black Coffee. Tyler today, who's colored, not just by being mixed race, but in culture.
Sure.
Trevor Noah, who is colored, but mixed race because he's not culturally colored.
Sure.
And so many other South Africans. It's like, guys, even for white people, because they listen to some of these chairs like, they speak about Black consciousness and whatever. You're like, some of this is going to save you. Because I sat in a room once with a white old man speaking about the future of sports in South Africa. And he said the birth rate of white South Africans is so low. I think Elon Musk still echoes the same thing about whites globally. It's so low that if South African sports is going to be competitive in the future, we are forced to develop non-white athletes. If we want the future of the African economy to compete with the world and for you to preserve Camps Bay and your beautiful mansion, and you will have to invest in Black colored entrepreneurs, because they will save your ass tomorrow.
Exactly.
You'll go to Europe, you'll fuck out and you'll be broke and you'll come back. You'll go to America, you'll realize that you don't have what it takes, you're not that good, and it's gonna take these experiments, they call them experiments in politics, the Musi Maimanis of the future, to preserve your privilege, for now I guess against Black people, sadly, but in the future against a potential neo-colonization of China, Russia, America. Who's going to protect you if you're not investing in these people? Because the Russians, the Indians, the Americans, the Germans, the Canadians, when they get here, you're not going to be part of their crew.
Sure.
But you will not have capacitated the people that you live with today to become strong and to be like, no, this is my white brother. And I've come up with him. The same way Siya Kolisi protects his white rugby mates on the team.
You know, like, it makes me think of two things, what you're saying. Number one, look at what's happened in China, right? I don't know how people feel about China, but I see China and I see a lot of powerful things they're doing. So, for example, the EV, electric vehicle market in China has blown up. China produces much more electric vehicles now than anyone else in the world, 100%. Right? And people complain, they're like, they're getting giant subsidies from the government. That's why
Chinese Communist Party. Boy.
Sure, that's why they're doing better than us. And they're even like blocking these EVs from coming into Europe because they're so competitive, right?
Yeah.
But Elon Musk took the production of Tesla to China. Why? Because he knows that those guys can put a car together like crazy, right? They're efficient like that. And some people argue that the reason why the EV market in China has blown up is because they had the car there, they had the Tesla there, and they were like,
it's like the iPhone and the Huawei.
What's up, Baba?
The iPhone, the Huawei, the Xiaomi, because they used to put it together there as well.
Sure. So it makes, and why did Elon Musk take it there? You know, people are complaining about government subsidies, yet at the same time, because it makes business sense, he's taking it there. So in other words, what's good for China is good for business. That's what I'm basically saying. And so you can't tell me that in South Africa, it's good for business when there are people who are not educated, you know, people who are just not achieving their full potential, which leads me to the next point. Think about the idea of conscientiousness. You know, you are supposed to create an EV, an electric vehicle, or you want an electric vehicle business. You want people who are going to be able to put the right component in the right place all the time. You know, you don't want a guy who's going to be, hey, Baba, what were you doing last week? And he puts it in, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You want people who are like almost robotic, which is what people say about China and their manufacturing culture.
Yeah.
How do you develop conscientiousness? You know, I always say to my 13-year-old son that, my brother, if you want to be, you know, the next Elon Musk or whatever, you need to know that when a line is straight, it needs to be straight. And that thing talks about accuracy, talks about precision. Some people will say to you, even Africans themselves, we're not it's African time. What is that nonsense? African time. We shouldn't have African time. We should just have time.
Yeah.
Because if you want, you know, I always say capitalism thrives in accuracy, in predictability, in systems working really well. So you want the systems to work well because it's good for business, right? So if you want good working systems, invest in mathematics, invest in the sciences.
Sure.
Make sure that these kids understand that when it's straight, it needs to be straight. You know, if you're going to do coding, my man, you miss one nyana sign,
Those are straight
comma,
facts.
whatever, it's just not going to work.
The code doesn't work. One comma,
it doesn't work. So that idea of conscientiousness, and you know, this thing that, and again, it's our own suffering as Black people, that somehow, you know, when you see someone doing something accurate, I've had colleagues, you know, Black colleagues work with me at WITS, and when you say to the guy, Baba, but why are you late for the meeting? Wena? You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And you realize that, hey, guys, we need to decolonize accuracy.
Yeah.
We need to decolonize being modern.
Yeah.
Because all of these things, so the point that I'm making is that if you invest in education, and if you invest in these type of things, you know, in people being systematic, that's how we're going to see our country producing new types of energy. You know, who would want to invest in, bring a high-tech company into a space where people just are not conscientious,
Sure.
you know, where they're not going to do things in accuracy?
I'd like us to stop here, and I'd like to invite you back at some point. I've got so many more things to discuss with you. I had talking points like the union buildings, who your favorite architects are, even though we've mentioned a few today and why. And we still haven't gotten to the future of architecture and your own personal vision, specifically when we speak about Wakanda, what you do all of the buildings there, etc. So I'd like you to come back and indulge me. Any closing words from your side? Besides calling out to Sbuda.
The whole conversation we just had is Wakanda, Penuel, because I talked about this thing of conscientiousness. I talked about this thing of being conscious of why it's important for us to overtly express ourselves as Africans. I talked about Singapore. I talked about China in the EV market. All of that stuff is me actually creating a picture in our minds of what we could be as Africans and in South Africa. If we could take all of that and consolidate that, that's actually Wakanda. You know, Wakanda, what was it about? It was about taking vibranium and maximizing it. You know, maximizing it. Yes, there's Black Panther and the plant and whatever, but taking vibranium, think about that. If we had like a lot of silicon in South Africa and we had lots of other minerals over and above the platinum and whatever that go into these EVs, and we wanted to actually really, you know, make the value chain work more for us so that we can produce these things, so that we can make cell phones in South Africa. What is it going to take? This whole conversation is about that. So people who are hating on you, talking about Stain City, don't think about the bigger picture. You're actually trying to say to people, hey guys, what about our EV? What about our, you know, supply chain? What about our accuracy? What about our Elon Musks? That's the whole point of this conversation. So Wakanda is taking all of that, consolidating it and saying, guys, can we visualize a futuristic South Africa?
Dr. Sechaba Maape, thank you so much for coming through to the Penuel show, and I look forward to hosting you again.
I want to start 2024.
You guys are still rolling, nah? Well, these guys roll afterwards, so just watch. If you like...